welcome to Big Apple School Podcast. This is Mike.
And this is Ken.
And today's topic, we're going to be talking about how people change through time.
That's a very interesting topic. Let me start that by asking you whether you accept the theory that people don't change through time.
You asked a pretty interesting question there, Ken. This opinion of mine fluctuates through time, actually, right? So we all kind of start off with the idea. I think this is a global thing, right? We were taught as children that, people change. People change. That phrase, people change.
But
people
it
change.
is true.
I don't know. I mean, as I live longer and longer, I am more inclined to say that people don't change.
What makes you say that, though?
That inner core, your looks will change. Your preferences change.
Definitely.
Even your values might change, right? But that inner person in you, there's like this inner core personality, this inner core personality of yours. I don't know if that changes. I really don't know. I don't know if I'm not really sure if that changes or not.
You sound a bit philosophical to me right now because somehow I seem to understand you in a way, but then again, I gotta make a stand, and my stand is I really think people change through time. But would you like to explain further what you mean by this?
I think this is a philosophical question. I don't know. There's an old phrase. I don't know if you're aware of this. It's this fantastic documentary, right? And it's probably one of the most valuable documentaries we'll get to have in the 20th and 21st century to leave behind the next generation of humans, right? And it's called the Up series. Started by a British filmmaker called Michael Apted in the 60s, I believe, in England, right, in Britain. And what it is that it follows the lives of children from the age of 7. And Michael Apted comes back every 7 years to document them, So 7, 14, 21, 28,
right.
35, and on and on and on. Well, guess how old the children are now?
No idea.
60s.
Wow.
Yeah. So they've been documented every 7 years, and it shows how people, change and don't change, right? And basically, these children grow up with dreams and aspirations. They grow up with visions how the world should be and is,
right? And
how that sort of changes or stays the same as they grow up. Well, this series is very important, right? Because we can leave behind the next generation. Like, let's say 500 years from now, people can look at this documentary, right? Hours of footage of how people started their lives and ended their lives. Right? From start to end. There hasn't really been a documentary series like this.
But my question though is, how many of those children actually changed or didn't change at all?
I'm going to get into that. But just before I get into that, right? But here's the thing, interesting thing about the thing. It started in Britain, but it spawned other countries, even including SSSR.
Oh.
There is a one. So, and the children this year is supposed to be their 35th. So the children are our age, 35 years old this year. So this year is the year that they released 35 Up USSR, right? So it followed them since they were 7 during the collapse of the Soviet Union and onwards and onwards. So it's been done in the USA, Japan, it's been done in Russia, and in South Africa. The South African was a very tragic one because a lot of the kids died from AIDS before they reached 28.
That's very sad.
Right? So, but it just shows you the state of the societies. So it's a good sociological kind of study of how people in our generation lived, right? Well, the reason why Michael Apted in the original UK series started that documentary in the series, the original thematic, the question they were trying to answer is, do people change or not through time? And do people's circumstances change through time? So Britain is a very class-based society, right? And they wanted to explore that if you're born in an upper class, do you remain in the upper class when you're older? From childhood to old age.
Right.
And likewise, if you're born in the lower classes, do you stay in the lower class as an adult throughout your life? And the result has been actually rather random. So people who are in the upper become middle class become upper class. It's kind of random. It
Right.
really cannot be predicted that way, right? So the thematic, the tagline of the show is, show me a child at age 7 and I will show you the man. In other words, when you're 7 years old, your personality has already developed. That inner core has already been developed by that age. And you'll carry that with you for the rest of your life, right? And that's an old adage, that's an old saying, and actually not from the documentary, but actually is an old Christian sort of a missionary, words or something like this, right? So, but you can kind of see that the inner self of the children have not really changed, even at age 50, 60 or whatever, right? They're still the same, right? The introvert who means well for the world is still an introvert who means well for the world at age 50, 60. Right.
Well, I see your point, and I kind of agree with that. But because I'm also trying to assess myself, am I still the same person as I was, from 7 years, 10, whatever years ago? And all I can say is that practically I'm still the same from my inner core, the so-called inner core. But a lot has changed with my values, principles in life. But I just want to discuss, a couple of things in relation to change, because as they say, life is a constant change. I really agree with that because, as you grow older, you have a lot of realizations. I used to be very idealistic when I was younger. I thought the world was perfect, that everything can come true. But I don't want to sound very pessimistic right now. But everything is grounded in reality. You have to understand that not every dream that you have may come true. Of course, fairy tales, Disney films will always tell you dreams do come true, that nothing is impossible. But then again, we live in a real world. There are bounds, there are limitations, not just, your talent, but there are certain things that are not within your control that will somehow dictate how your life will be, like the society, what kind of economic system you have. Even if, say, for example, you mentioned about the USSR, for example, even if I'm, let's say, progressive and I wanted certain things to be introduced, but I cannot just do it on my own. So it's not, totally within my hands. So there are certain things that will really dictate how your life will change. And with that, your views as well. In my case right now, I would say, so from being idealistic, I became a bit optimistic. Now I would say I'm realistic.
I think that's a pretty common change. I don't know how to answer that one, to be honest. Like I said, it fluctuates through time, my opinion on whether people change or not. And I just don't really... The truth is that in our lives, right, we rarely get to see people, the same kind of people, for more than 20, 30 years. Right? People change, come and go. The only people that are consistent in your life are probably your family, immediate family members, right? Do they change through time? From my experience, no, they don't. None of them have changed since I was a child, right?
Likewise.
But there's your answer right there. So maybe we get to see changes in people for maybe about 10 years if they're your friends, right? Maybe 20 if you're lucky, if you grew up around them, right? But to see that long period of change, we are bound by human mortality, I'm afraid, right? So I don't know. I really don't think that people change. I start to really realize as I get older that people are not going to change. It's actually better off just to think that way because more likely this person that you're seeing now, you're probably not going to see them in 10, 20 years anyway to even see the change. So what's the point? So assume that their behaviors today is going to be the same next year and the year after.
Or maybe we can put it this way, like we all have our individual, I would say, uniqueness, if you can call it that, the core that you have mentioned earlier. So we have this inner core, but as time goes by, I guess we get to retain some of it, but the others tend to change. Because then again, our perceptions in life are shaped by society with our relationships. Because, for example, before I used to be, optimistic about relationships. It's like, oh, we're friends today. We're going to be friends forever. But look what happened. Some of my relationships, friendships in particular, they ended for some reason. So it's not just about the distance, me not seeing them, but it's, the difference in interests. Some of the friends that I met when I came back to the Philippines, so we gathered and we had this sort of like dinner together. And then while I was talking to each and every one, I just realized we don't have anything in common anymore. Like, you're not the person that I used to know. Like, okay, so we're just cool because we're friends. But in reality, at least from my point of view, deep inside, I thought, you're a different person. And the things that, they're talking about now, to be honest, I couldn't give,
two shits.
Yeah.
So,
I don't know. I mean, I agree with you when you said about this inner core, because, for example, in my case, I'm still very, not religious. I don't want to use that word, but let's just say I still believe in God, basically. I still believe in the good that each person has. Still a bit optimistic in a way, but certain things have changed.
It's kind of ironic.
I know, that's why I'm kind of torn.
No,
with this.
I get it. It's sort of a, it's a bit of a conundrum for you. But for me, it's like that whole theory about, things are in constant change, right? That the kings of that philosophy are the Buddhists, right? So they believe that the whole universe and everything is in constant change, right? Strangely enough, Buddhism also teaches non-attachment, right? So my girlfriend asked me the other day, you haven't called your mom and dad in weeks, don't you miss them? And I said, no, right? Basically.
I think that's very Russian, they have this, I don't know if you can call it attachment. Let's just say it's strong connection.
Parental attachment, right? Yeah. But for me, like, I've never been attached to people. I've always accepted.
Not even your parents.
I've always been accepted. I've always accepted the fact that people come and go. People will come and go. You will come and go. You will change.
I realize
they'll
that
change.
too. Yeah.
But I've always believed that, even as a little child, right? So for me, a new discovery, new people to meet, being friends with new people, always has been the priority, right? And once the friendship ends, that ends too.
Okay.
People move on.
So no emotions there?
No, none whatsoever. So
are you saying that? Okay, so.
But I've always been like that. That hasn't changed, right? So ironically, I don't believe in the one side of Buddhism that says people change. I don't believe that. But at the same time, I believe in the non-attachment that the Buddhists preach. Do you understand? So to me, I think it's. But once you accept that basically, people come and go and all these kind of things, new relationships and new friendships will form, new business partnerships will form. Once you accept that, your life becomes so much easier.
Oh, well.
Yeah. Because you're not trying to resist change. Do you understand?
Right.
You're with it. Yeah. You're rolling with it instead of against it.
Mike,
it's just 1 degree shift in your head, but makes your life so much easier. Yeah.
Just out of curiosity, how do you see yourself? Do you see yourself more as a, I don't know, like the realistic type or optimistic, pessimistic? I mean, you know these
totally optimistic.
Labels.
Totally realistic. Totally realistic.
All right.
Right. So for me, it's be practical or go home. Right. So I don't know. I've never really bought into any BS philosophies or any lofty ideas about the world or anything like this. I just kind of saw it as it is.
I'm just interested to know, but have you ever cried? I just want to know if you have emotions.
I cannot. You know what's funny? What my mom says?
What?
She says to me, you don't cry. I've never seen you cry, right? You've never, like, she basically says to me, you're a tearless bastard. She says to me, right? It's funny because I think it all kind of happened when I was a little kid. You know how little kids, if they want something, let's say they're walking with the parents, they see a toy or something like this, like, oh, I want this, I cry until I get it, right? Well, my parents basically left me if I did that. So they just walked away. What's a kid gonna do? We're gonna stare at toys or follow the parents? It's gonna follow the parents, right?
Of course.
So I think that's kind of taught me as a kid, right? Don't rely on others, right? Do not rely on others. Be independent. Do not You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I understand, but I still want you to answer the question.
What?
Do you ever cry?
I can't remember the last time I did.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I cannot remember the last time I did.
You're not so emotional.
I enjoy life.
Okay, you just enjoy life.
I just enjoy life, right? That's a good enough. That's a good enough emotion to spend 95%.
I mean, I also enjoy life, but then again, maybe it's just my personality. I'm just
Why cry about it? You're only gonna
type.
live for 67 years, 80 years, 90 years at max. Why cry about it, right? That's my point.
It must be cool to be you.
It's not worth it. It's not worth it. It's really not, right? Something that you realize as you grow up, But you know what I do have a problem with? I'll tell you what. So I have no problem with people having different philosophies about change and basically, through time, all these things. To each his own.
Right.
This is free life. It's your own. But I do have a little bit of a problem with this, right? In the recent years, in the last 10 years or so, we've seen an emergence of these weird-ass personality tests become very, very popular as little hobby gossip talk, especially amongst the female crowd.
Well, yeah.
In much of the global culture, right?
Right.
So I'll give you one case, and I really hate this with a paid hatred. It's called the Myers-Briggs personality test, right? Now, this test was originally designed by, I believe, a psychologist, or maybe even a psychiatrist, a long time ago, right? In the United States. And he postulated this. His sample tests were comprised of his students at a university, just a class. But for some reason, decades later, people have taken up this test, and described themselves, changed their relationships according to it, changed their behaviors, lifestyles. It's like you take an introvert, extrovert, something, inner, outer, and then you form like a 4-letter abbreviation, like ENJK or INPF or whatever, right? And they'll identify themselves with it. They'll say, I'm an INPF, and I don't really match well with EN whatevers, right? And therefore, I tend to form my relationships around these type of personalities, right? I know what they're doing. They're trying to understand themselves, right? And they've taken a vehicle to do that, right? It's like a simple vehicle. Simple, fun vehicle, like a Myers-Briggs test.
Right.
But the problem is people are now identifying themselves with this, right?
So it's like they strictly identify with a particular...
It is not, it's just a hypothesis. It's not even a theory. Right. It hasn't even been tested on a bigger scale, right? So when it comes from a scientific point of view, it's lame ass. Actually, this thing has not been tested. But for some reason, marketing people have taken it up, just like the Maslow's, pyramid of needs, whatever.
Maslow's.
It's just a little hypothesis. It's never been tested on a big scale. But people take it up, they form, marketing around it, and they preach it to other people. And these people lap it up, drink it, and they preach to others about it, talk about it, revolve their life around it.
As if it's the ultimate
As if this thing is this thing cures cancer. This thing told me everything about what I need to know about myself and others around me and how I should structure my life.
Wait, so what makes you kind of annoyed with it? I mean, what seems to be the problem?
Well, you're taking something that is a hypothesis and trying to apply it to reality. Hypothesis, from a scientific point of view, is not applicable to real life.
Right.
It has to be tested on a bigger sample size with more statistical, probability.
Right.
Yeah. So it's just something that really annoys me. It really gets me peeved off, to be honest, that the people are applying little things that people did a long time ago for no serious reason and are trying to, you come up with one of the biggest philosophical questions, the humans get to have in their lives, which is, do I change? What kind of person am I? Who am I? Who is the other person? How should I live? Right? These are questions that require deep, long self-thought, not rely on some hypothetical theories. Yeah.
But then again, I guess the reason why they still take this for individuals, if we talk about, ordinary people, is just they just want to have a starting point where to begin on how to understand themselves. But personally, in my case, I don't take it seriously. So I still take some kind of a personality test just to draw some conclusions out of myself. And this is just kind of a guide, actually, but it doesn't mean that it's gonna dictate how I should act or behave in society. No, it's just for me like, okay. It's one of those, for example, these days we have on Facebook some games that will determine what kind of personality you have. But then again, when you get the result, you evaluate it from your perspective. Is this really true? No, I don't think so. Maybe this one, yeah, sort of, kind of. But you don't, well, personally, I don't take it very seriously. It's just for me to know like, okay, there might be some truth in it, but not the entire truth.
But how's that going to help you in your life, in practical terms?
Well, it gives me an idea on how to relate with other people, knowing that I am sort of an extrovert in a way, like, okay, so I should be, if I come across with introverts, maybe I should be a little more careful to them because they might not be so convenient in talking to, extroverts like me, something like that. I don't know. It's just...
So it's helped you in the past? I'm talking real world here.
Yeah, I understand. Not necessarily, but it's sort of just a general idea of what I'm like, at least from, from this test. But anyway, I do understand.
Right. I just do what I want to do. Mm-hmm. I just do what I want to do on what I want to say. Mm-hmm. And I know it's going to, I just rely on statistical probability, right? Is that my job in this world is not to make everybody like me, right? It's to find people that are going to like me. And there are a lot of people in this world, right? So if people don't like the way I do things or like what I say or whatever, I'll just go find other people.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, that's the whole point of being an explorer, right? Is to find other people who are going to gel with you.
You're very practical in that sense.
I mean, why bother trying to adjust yourself, and the world is full of people, right? I have a question for you.
Go ahead.
What do you think, what are the biggest forces that change people through time?
I've already mentioned some of them earlier. Their relationship with other people, the economic system that they're born into, not just the economic system, but the social, system.
Have you ever experienced it here in Russia? How people change through time because of some social economic system?
I guess that's a very difficult question and a bit sensitive in a way to discuss, but what do you think?
Why are you asking a question with a question, you coward? Look, I have seen a truckload of that here. Yeah, but the problem is I've only been here a year. So I haven't really seen people change that much. But I'll give you a case and example. That documentary I was talking about, born in the USSR, right? These kids who are now 35. Majority of these kids started up as idealistic optimists, right? Even some of them were actually pioneers,
right?
Yeah, back in the day. Well, by the time they're about 28, right, their perception of the world has completely shifted. It had shifted, right? By that stage, they've had a child or two,
right?
Yeah, most of them. And for example, there's one guy, he actually lives here in Novosibirsk in the documentary. He's from Kazakhstan.
Oh, okay.
So Kyrgyzstan, right? And he started off as a guy who was part of the Soviet system, right? And he misses that because here in Novosibirsk, 7 years ago, he was working as one of those guys who sell things at the markets.
Right.
Yeah. So he was called a gastrobaiter. Yeah, is what they call, right? And he hated that, right? So he saw how his world changed. He was born into a world where everybody was equal. And then as he grew up, as that system collapsed and the socioeconomics changed, he had become a second-class citizen, essentially. A foreign worker in a place where he used to be part of his territory. Yeah, he used to be part of the union, right? So for him, you can see by the time he was 28, his optimism had completely faded. Yeah, so completely faded, right? Because now he was working at the markets in cold day, minus 20, 30 degrees, selling goods, doing it hard, living in a small apartment, trying to make it through. Do you know what I mean? He felt that if he was still under the Soviet system, he'd be no different to anyone else.
So you see, that's the point.
Well, but this is just one case, right? Just one guy at the market, right? And I walk around here and it makes me wonder how many people have been through similar experiences.
Well, that's very unfortunate for them.
Yeah, well, but it's just that I think you're right that socioeconomics do influence people hugely.
Yeah, of course.
But then I talk to some people about it, and people say politics is one thing, socioeconomics is one thing, people are another thing. They have this attitude here. And I tell them, no, it's not. No, it is not. It is completely, you are influenced by that completely in and out, inside and out. Your life will change. Everything will change around you according to that, right? For me, I had an experience here. Basically, I went to a North Korean restaurant here. There's an actual North Korean restaurant here. There was. I'm not sure if it's there anymore. But when I first arrived here, and there were all these people, right? These North Koreans, right? And they looked poor nutrition. They were small, they were skinny. They all had, like they've received so much sun from working in the fields, right? They obviously want the Pyongyang elite. So that country has a system like Moscow, where Moscow was the place where the elites lived. Right. And everybody lived kind of on the outskirts of that, right? So these guys want the elites. They were kind of the village kids who were sent to Russia to work as foreign laborers, right? And I looked at them and I just kind of thought, Jesus Christ, these guys look
Wait.
Yeah.
What? They're still in that condition?
Yes.
I mean, when you saw them?
Yes.
How would that be?
They look like my grandparents, the post-war generation, the generation that didn't get to eat, the generation that lived in sort of bleak times. They just felt like, and they looked stressed, they looked afraid, they looked totally different to the modern South Korean kids that I grew up around.
Wait. What made you draw the conclusion that they were North Koreans?
It's a North Korean restaurant. With North Korean flags and Victory Day marches on the TV screens, right? Well, so this is a government-owned restaurant. So in North Korea, they don't have private individual. They don't have private property. It's not a private business. It's run by the government, right? So what I realized is that the only difference between these people and I were the fact that I was born maybe 70 kilometers away from them. So I was only 50 kilometers away from the North Korean border. You have to understand. So because of that, I was born into a different socioeconomic system, the one that was filled with optimism.
And therefore you have a different mentality.
Completely different life. I came here as a tourist. They came here as foreign workers.
Right.
Yeah, receiving whatever, measly salary that they receive. To send back home. Completely different situation, but only born a few kilometers away, right? So that tells me how, it was just looking at me in the face, how these socioeconomic political situations completely shape the destinies of people.
And that makes a huge difference.
It makes a huge difference. And you just really cannot be in denial to say that it doesn't, that's just government. This is us. We're individuals. It doesn't affect us. That's putting your head in the sand mentality. It doesn't work. Yeah. Right. But, like, for example, your country, Philippines, at the moment is going through some forces of change, right? With Duterte power and whatnot. Tell me a little bit about that.
For the longest time, we have been, I would say, very... I'm trying to be careful here because you never know if there are Filipinos listening out there. But all I'm going to say is I'm glad that we have such a leader who's strong, who's iron-fisted, because we used to have, I would say, half-hearted leaders who were not that, strict when it comes to implementing the rules. But right now we have, I would say, a president who, he's the type of leader who's like no BS. He's not just talk. He's all about actions. He may not be very diplomatic in the way he expresses himself. He says it exactly the way it should be said, which I appreciate. But not a lot of people actually agree to that because it's just not very nice. But right now I would say that the country, I guess, is moving to a different direction in terms of politics. We tend to be a little, it's hard to, say some words that, because I don't want to sound like...
But let's talk about the street level here. Let's not talk about the upstairs, right? Let's talk about the downstairs here, right? So let's talk about how it changes people. How is it changing people? Because this guy has been around for like 3-4 years now, right? In power. So he's instituted some really die-hard policies against certain things, right? How's it changing people on the streets?
I think we have become less liberal in a way. I wouldn't say less tolerant, but I guess we're going in that direction because we tend to have a bit of an extreme view now.
Towards what?
With I hate to talk about this. When it comes to some particular, maybe foreigners, some neighbors, which I will not mention the nationality. I don't want to end up in hot water.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
But, okay, I'll just end there.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, that's your freedom, mate.
Yeah.
If you don't wanna.
I just want to be careful.
Yeah. That's
Mike,
all right. Yeah.
We've been talking too seriously about this topic. Why don't we talk something personal? So,
yeah, I'm going.
On that note, I just want to ask you, how would you? Well, it's still in line with our topic. How people change through time. Before that, I just want to ask you, how would you describe your childhood?
Childhood. It was free. It was do what you want, right? It was literally do what you want, how you want it.
Were you naughty?
I wouldn't say I was any more naughty than any other kids. I mean, that's the point. But we were given a lot of freedom to do what we wanted, and how to express our view of the world.
Did you end up doing, I don't know, did you get into trouble, like serious ones?
Nothing serious. Wasn't that kind of wasn't that kind of kid, right?
So would you say then you had a happy childhood?
Yeah, I mean nothing that would end up that would make me end up in juvenile detention centers.
Okay, well,
right. Juvenile detention centers are basically prison for children.
Exactly.
That's the.
It's just just want to make it.
There are kids that are like that. Yeah, and I've seen and I've hung around kids that are like that end up in juvie, what we call juvenile detention centers. They're different kids. They usually come from really chaotic backgrounds.
Right.
Usually starts at the home. Yeah, something's wrong with the dad, something's wrong with the mom. Maybe one of them is absent, both of them are absent. Right. One of them's abusive.
Right.
It usually has that background. Yeah. So kids who end up in that kind of side of things, they come from a certain background, tend to, yeah. So, no, I mean, we've all done things when we were little kids, like stole things, broke into, cars, steal things, we've all done that. Who hasn't done that, right? And in Australia, of course, every kid, pretty much has access to drugs from a very young age. Yeah, so as soon as you enter high school, year 7, 8, 9, pretty much you get access to that.
That's insane. Thank God I've never done that.
Philippines has a very diehard, attitude towards drugs now, especially under Duterte. But in Australia, there are hard drugs and there are soft drugs, and there are kiddie drugs, right? And
I like the term.
Yeah, the kiddie drugs, right? It's like, in fact,
I wonder what kind of drug.
Well, like marijuana or pot. These things are called kiddie grass, for a reason. Right, kiddie grass, kids smoke it, right? So it's a grass for kids, right? So, these things are around our lives, right? But we all grow out of this, most of us. By the time you hit 17, 18, 19, you grow out of it. You know what I mean? Most of us, some don't, yeah.
But and have you? I'm sorry.
Of course, it's part of growing up in a country like that, yeah.
Right.
But of course, what had happened is that. For a couple of decades ago, there was I wouldn't say a couple of decades, maybe about 15 years ago, there was an infiltration of a certain type of hard drug that was imported to the Philippines. At this time, right? So we don't want to go back into that topic,
right?
But and that became a social problem, massive social problem. But they've cracked down on that, and that's being managed well. Yeah. So I guess the one of so these forces do kind of this sort of liberal progressive culture has a tremendous effect in the way we grow up and the way we express ourselves later on in life. Right. So so we sort of kind of grow up with the attitude of just kind of being free to do whatever. But we also have to understand that not all nations are like that. Yeah. So I guess that was my childhood. Yeah. Free, nice and easy and relaxed. Yeah. What about yours in the Philippines?
I would say, all in all, my childhood was a happy one because I grew up in the village. I had my farm animals, chickens. I helped raise them with the help of my grandmother, of course. I got to play in the river with my friends, with other, kids. And even though we were not financially capable, but I would say that it was a happy childhood because I was able to do everything that a child, is supposed to do at that time. But of course, we do change when we moved to Manila. So when we moved to the city, I just realized that kids in the city are far different from the ones in the village. They're a little more, I would say, like risk takers, and some of them were, I would say, rather rude and more emboldened to say what's on their mind. Unlike, in the village, at least in the Philippines, I would say we're more scared of the elderly. We really follow them, we listen to them. But in the city, the kids tend to be wilder, crazier, more rebellious. That's how I would put it.
Right.
But, well, in my case, I still had the village boy in me. So I tried to keep, that way. However, of course, when you're surrounded by such people, you eventually become like them in some way. But not totally for me, because I'm still, well, at that point in my life, I was still religious because I was born into this Catholic family. So I always prayed every single day. Every Sunday we went to the church. But it only lasted eventually when I went to university. I started, not believing in any kind of religion. It's not just about Catholicism, which is the predominant religion in the Philippines. But I would say I became more realistic. And although I still believe in God, but I don't believe in, in the preachings of priests, or as they call it in Islam, how do you call that? Imam. No, I don't listen to those spiritual leaders or whatever. And in terms of changes in life, I can say that I have grown a lot as a person because of the experiences that I've had over the years.
Okay, so, I mean, obviously, going from a village kid to a city kid, I mean, when did this happen? How old were you when this happened?
I was 12, 13.
12, 13. Must have been psychologically pretty big change.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, so did you try at first very hard to adjust and be part of the city kid crowd?
At first, it was a bit of a culture shock for me because I thought, they use certain words. It's like, you're not supposed to say that. But then again, because you're surrounded by such kids, and then you eventually kind of, adapt it into your system and you become one of them, I guess.
Right. Well, in Australia, the small town kids are wilder than the city kids.
Oh.
They drink harder, they drive earlier, they shoot guns, they kill livestock.
Wow.
You don't mess with farm kids. Yeah, they will kill you if you do that, right? So, because you have to understand, these kids start driving tractors when they're like 9, 10 years old.
Right.
They learn how to ride motorbikes since they're like 5 or 6 years old. Yeah. So, and they can shoot a rabbit. Yeah. At night, and I've seen one kid do this, right? At night, using nothing but a spotlight, 3 rabbits with 3 bullets, 100 meters away. Bring it back, skin it, put it on the fire. I mean, you think, these are country kids. No, you don't do that. They're used to killing. They're used to drinking. They're used to fighting.
Right.
They're used to, you know what I'm saying?
It's their way of life.
Yeah, but then I heard that Russia has some equivalent of this too, right? There's some town, like I said to my students here, Novosibirsk is very safe. It's lovely, people are very well behaved. People don't scream at nighttime because they're drunk. They say, wait till you go to some like the village types, right? Then you got the guys who don't have jobs and they drink and they fight and they'll, So actually you get the wilder guys, right? You actually get the wilder guys in Australia in the farming towns because they got nothing else to but drink and be in conflict sometimes, right? And they're good at that.
It's interesting. We have, a bit of a like reverse situation here because
the city people are actually better behaved generally and they are more educated, whereas the country people are willing to just kind of say what they want to your face, right? Wow. And then just get it done over with.
Ours is, the people in the village, they're more traditional. Right. I would say, how do you call that? Like small town mentality. So they're very, traditional. Right. They follow the customs, unlike in the city where they're more liberated or liberal in terms of their views.
You got 3 types of towns in Australia. You got the farm towns, then you got the beach towns,
right?
And then you got the cities, right? So the beach town is where the kids surf and they skate and they play all day, they smoke drugs and whatnot, right? So they come in, they're the biggest druggies, right, in the town, right? And they all come to the cities to live eventually, right? Most of them. And the farm kids are the toughies, right? And they really, really strong kids, right? The city ones are slightly the more cosmopolitan, they're the more understanding, they're the more, these sort of kids sort of live in the cities. So it's a very, very different background. But I guess as a culture, Australia's changing. The people are changing because of the connection to the internet, social media.
Right.
The beach kids feel like city kids now. And the farm kids are starting to become more like city kids too because they have access to the internet, right? So you see the technology changes people in that, right? So in that sense, I guess people are changing in that sense. All right. I think that's about all the time we have for today, but that was a hell of a topic.
I hope everybody enjoyed it.
Yeah, I mean, how people change through time. What a topic. It's something that I think our audiences should think about too.
They should.
Yeah, they should. Well, this has been the Big Apple School podcast. I hope you enjoyed the show. And this is Mike, signing off.
Ken,
signing off.
Yes.